And we are live. It's Freedom Friday, and we are still not free, but hopefully you will be freer by the end of this show than you were at the start. So good morning, Sharif El Mekki. Brother, what's up, man?
Hey man, good morning. Good to be here on this it's beautiful rain up here in Philly today. And it's great. Looking forward to today's show, man. When you're prepping for a show, a lot of times I get angry and inspired, but this one was just, prepping for this was just like fun,
Fun. Yeah, it was way more fun prepping for this show than some of our other ones. I mean, I'm always excited and I always think it's fun to delve in and get information about Black history, about Black education, Black teaching, the stuff we care about. But you're right. Oftentimes you're going down a rabbit hole and you're bumping up against all kinds of little facts that make you just mad, like, historic facts. This one is so philosophical that it reminds you that there's another part of your brain, too, that you could just be playing with. Like The Matrix, which is our topic for today. For everybody who watched last week, yes, we brought it back. And for those who didn't watch last week, the movie The Matrix came up in our discussion last week. And we said, you know what? We should be talking about The Matrix on one of our shows. So that's what today is. We're going to talk about the movie The Matrix. And man, why would y'all talk about The Matrix? It's just a movie. And it's an old movie. Sharif, I forgot how old this movie is. This is how old I am.
This is like your favorite show, right? 1999. I mean, your favorite year, 1999.
Yeah. Like, I did not know that this movie was like, if you would have asked me just quickly on the fly, Chris, how old is that movie? I would not have said that this movie is over 20 years old.
Yeah.
Because, and then, so in prep for this, you probably did the same thing. I went back and watched it again. And I was like, this is still holding up. This movie is still holding up. The CGI and all the effects and everything you would expect to be like, oh my God, that was like terrible.
Yeah.
It was actually pretty good. So anyways, why would we talk about the Matrix on a Freedom Friday show, a show that is meant to unearth the things germane to the freedom of Black people? A piece of art that is a Hollywood movie starring Hollywood actors. Why would that be important to this particular show? It's a good question. I asked it myself. That's what makes it a good question. But but here is why I think it's important. If you go back and watch The Matrix, and there are three of them, watch the entire trilogy, you will see an exercising of so many themes germane to those who have racial discussions or philosophical discussions. That's just crazy. You're being entertained the whole time. There's lots of action, fight scenes, all kinds of inside jokes, whatever. And at the same time, it's an allegory. I don't know if that's the word that people use, but it's an allegory for something bigger in life. So let's just start with a little piece of the basic, and then we'll jump right in. And people in the comments, I know you have seen this movie, one of them at least, but probably the first one. Jump in too. Add the facts. What I want you to do is add the things that you remember from the movie that are symbolic, or have some sort of connection to the situation we find ourselves in as Black people in the United States. I want to hear from you all of what you caught out of the movie, and from us too. But just a very quick setup is.
And let me just say, and if you haven't seen it, this show is all about being vulnerable. Admit it and learn, and promise to watch it soon.
Yeah, no, don't do that, because we're gonna give you a hard time if you do that. If you haven't seen The Matrix, go watch somebody else's morning broadcast. Just kidding. I'm joking. No. Sharif has got the right energy here. Let's be vulnerable. If you haven't seen it, let's not point out the fact that you so behind the times that you don't even need to live. No, just kidding, y'all. Just kidding. If you haven't seen the movie,
oh my God,
do what Sharif said. The very quick setup is this. You have a person who feels like he's sleeping all the time, and he's getting multiple hints. This is Neo, multiple hints from the universe that something is going on, but he doesn't quite know what it is. Every day that he's living feels just kind of like a dream that he can't wake up from, but isn't really apparent to him why he feels that way. Suddenly gets a call out of the blue from folks who are working in an underground movement who understand the dream that he's living in and want to show him the way. They find him and they get him to a character named Morpheus. They get Neo to a character named Morpheus, and Morpheus says, I can show you the thing that you are not seeing if you want me to. And if you want me to, there's no turning back. I'll show you. He says, you have a blue pill and you have a red pill. If you take the blue pill, you can go back to sleep again and just live in ignorant bliss. And you'll never even have to worry about the reality I'm about to show you. If you take the red pill, there's no turning back. You will see the world for what it is. You will see the truth in the world, and you will have to live out that truth. And you'll have to decide whether it's better to know the truth and see that the world that you are living in is fake and phony and oppressive in many ways, but at least you'll know the truth of it. So which do you choose? So Neo chooses the red pill, of course, and that sets off the entire movie. After that, Neo wakes up to a world in which he figures out that human beings are actually slaves to machines. Machines have taken over the world, and humans never realized that it happened. And they started growing human beings in a human field, a field of like a laboratory, just to use them as like energy sources, to plug them in, turn off their minds, and plug their heads into a matrix that creates a phony version of what the world is, so that they just can be used to produce energy without ever knowing that they're asleep, ever knowing that everything that they see around them is fake and is not real. Now, there's all kinds of religious connections and allegories. Neo is an anagram for one. They call Neo the One. Obviously, this is the Jesus character. Morpheus is the Greek word for the dream of God. So this would be like the consciousness of God. So Morpheus is the character that represents consciousness and helps Neo to awaken to himself. One of Neo's core partners in finding his mission is Trinity. And Trinity is the female character that is pretty badass and helps him. So you have Trinity, Morpheus, Neo, who go to see the Oracle, who is the all-knowing person within the Matrix. Turns out it's an older Black woman who is basically the mother of the Matrix. And later, in a later version, you figure out that there's a father of the Matrix or whatnot. And all along the way, you bump up against kind of religious allegory in the movie that tells you that you need to be liberated at some point. You don't know how it's going to come, but there's going to be an epic battle between the forces of reality and the forces of the Matrix. And Neo is the one to help you win for the side of reality. There are only two, this is the last thing I'm going to say. There are only two people in the movie, in the entire movie, who are actually what are called natural borns, meaning they were born outside of the Matrix. They were not actually babies harvested in the movie or in the Matrix, natural borns. And those are two Black men. So the Oracle, the mother of the Matrix, is a Black woman. She's Mother Earth. She's Mother Everything. And the only natural born citizens in the entire movie are two Black men. And the dream and the consciousness of the entire story is Morpheus, who is a Black man also. I think I'll stop there and jump in and say, okay, Sharif, what does any of this have to do with Freedom Friday, Black history, Black consciousness, what we talk about?
Yeah. So as you said, it's so deep. We can go in so many different directions. But I mean, for me, the one of the major themes of is this awakening, this understanding that ignorance is not so bliss. Ignorance is actually expensive, and there's a penalty for remaining ignorant, for choosing to remain ignorant. That choice that Neo ended up with the blue pill or the red pill. He had a choice, right? And I think the other one is just around mindset. Like, what does it mean to be a thinker, a a practitioner with consciousness. I saw a student, the other day, my wife and I were watching a film, and it reminded me, we saw a student a couple of weeks ago, and that I used to teach, early career, early 90s. And he said, you know what, I still remember. And one of the things I think about all the time is, used to tell us, if we said, oh, I think I can do something, or I think I can do, he said, you would always respond with, thinking comes from not knowing. And I didn't even remember saying that. He said, you used to say it all the time. And I was like, I vaguely, like it's consistent with how I think about things. But I'm like, you know what? Like, I actually got that from Baba Changa, my martial arts teacher, when he would say, like, I want you to try this or try that. I'd be like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. Oh, I think I can. And he's like, thinking comes from not knowing. When you know something is true, when you can do it, and conditioning your brain to think of, self-empowerment, right? Like, the self-discipline, the self-empowerment, the responsibility to oneself, I think, is important. Yeah. And this is so philosophical. It reminded me of Iran. It just takes me back. It reminds me of my growing up in Iran and two of their favorite poets, Rumi and Hafiz. Hafiz says something like, your words will become your house. Right? Like, you actually construct the parameters that you want to live in.
Wait, say that again. Your word will become
your words house? Will become your house. The house you live in.
Ooh, damn.
Yeah. And so that had me, so watching it again had me thinking about, I don't know what century they lived in, but it was a long time ago, these old, Persian poets. So yeah, it's a lot of just, thought. And when you're, I think, when you connect your work to spirituality, a film like this, is extremely interesting thing to dive into.
Man, so you got philosophical already. I love that. Your words become your house.
Yeah, become the house you live in, I think. I'll find it for you.
Wow. So I just need to start saying luxurious stuff all the time.
Well, you hear people say, put it in the universe. Oh, throw it up and put it, say it, and then it'll become. And you see, like, there's grounding in that. A lot of different cultures have something similar, but reminding ourselves of it, like what the energy we put out, the thoughts we put out. And so we have to be careful of that. When people talk about being gracious to ourselves while we're doing this hard work, it's absolutely important, and it has healing properties when you do it.
Man, I love that. You like the Morpheus of this show. I'm figuring this out already. I
thought you wanted to do this show, actually, a fun fact for folks who don't know, like, because generally everything comes back to West Philly, right? And so Neo was supposed to be played by Will Smith.
What's so funny about this too,
right?
That's an interesting point in that as I was looking through this, I found a few racial, I don't know what you would call them. They were takes on the Matrix that challenged kind of the racial casting and some different things about it along lines of race or gender. And one of the things I had forgotten about, I read this years ago, but didn't know that Will Smith passed up the role because he said that he didn't feel his acting was mature enough at the time to take on the role, and Keanu only got the role after Will Smith had turned it down. And how different this would have been if the lead character Neo was black, because then it wouldn't be accused at all of being a white saviorism story. But I want to go back to a point that's important for Black power, Black liberation, whatever. That moment where Morpheus offers you a pill, one of two pills that lead in. It's like, come on, you're going to have two doors. The blue door is the one where you get to be happy. You get to remain happy because you don't know that you are living in some BS. You don't know that this world is messed up. So you are free just to chill and suck down a whole bunch of mindless culture and watch movies and play video games and watch World Star Hip Hop and listen to music, have a good time, drink Robitussin like it's fun. You get to just have this lifestyle that is only built on the fact that you don't know everything and you don't need to, right? Like, why, if you can't beat it, why does knowing about it help you? And then the other offers the red pill. What the hell would make you take the red pill, El Mekki? The one that says, I'm going to show you the reality of the world, and it's going to be hella ugly, and you might not be able to beat it. What is even the benefit of that?
Yeah, I think for me, when I think about that and I think about our work, you have to be woke and conscious to be able to resist the machine, to be able to resist, whatever is oppressing you. And yeah, you can choose to ignore it, but at the same, when you choose to ignore it, you're actually dying, right? Like you can't live your fullest. You can't see like what your full human being. People, today talk about like showing up in my full self, right? Like you can't do that if you choose to ignore the conditions, and eventually it'll kill you, right? And so I think for us, as work as activists, even with the pain, you also will have authentic joy, right? Like not the, the virtual joy that they enjoy while they're being in the matrix, not the fake joy, but the joy of, realizing the full being of humanity. And I think, to resist, you have to, we've talked about this a lot, whether it's Malcolm or others talking about, awakening, Dr. King talking about being awake while you're doing the work. That's different. And it's a deeper level. Everything has levels of depth, right? Whether it's water, whether it's mathematicians, whether it's, resistance, there's depth to it. And I think, being awake allows you to, be more conscious, be more strategic, and be aware. Awareness is everything. Knowing thyself is everything.
I mean, knowing, and it's like it becomes hard. What do you do with it once you know? Once you've been awakened to something that feels pretty overwhelming.
Well, you see what G.I. Joe say, right?
What's that? What did G.I. Joe say?
Knowing's half the battle. Half of it is just knowing and understanding what the battle actually is.
What's interesting to me about this is the red pill. The idea of the red pill is that once you take it, you have clarity and you understand the world for what it actually is. In the movie, Neo becomes clear on the reality, and then he has a lot to learn after that. He still doesn't understand his full power, his ability to fight the system. And that is what the movie is about. It happens over time that he learns that he has all these powers, always did have all these powers within him to actually defeat the Matrix.
That's the black child, man. That's the black child.
The black child, knowing that it's in there, but it just hasn't been developed yet to be able to pull out in a fight. To fight
not only not developed, suppressed, deliberately, right? From early on, right? Like when you look at anti-blackness and the suppression of people, realizing that God created them and they are powerful and they are amazing and they have a connection to a higher being. That all of that being suppressed was deliberate, right? Attempting to remove the humanity from Black and brown people was, systematically, developed and reinforced over time up and through today, right? And so that understanding, that education, that belief in oneself and belief in your community and belief in your purpose, all of that takes work because there is a whole legion of folks and systems, and some people, they're not behind. They're just behind, just pressing the same button. They don't even know why they're pressing the button. They're also in the matrix in another way. They're just pressing white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy without even consciously doing it. And then you have the victims of it who, if it's not like this awakening, then the things just continue to be perpetuated throughout time.
That's a deep thought about what it takes to detach a person from reality so that they never really kind of wake up. So when you think about how did the machines beat the people in the first place so that you had people in the Matrix, they actually, they don't explain a lot of how it came to be that one day AI, artificial intelligence, and the machines actually slowly took over humans without humans knowing about it and conquered them and put them into these pods, plugged these things in their heads and their bodies and made them just batteries, basically just batteries for a machine learning society, a society that they don't explain how that came to be, but somehow that happened. And to me, that feels like that what we would, if we wanted to try and unpack that, we would say it's like a way of detaching a person from their reality so that you can use them, you can use their energy and use their labor. Boy, that sounds familiar, right? Like what you just said, as you were saying, and I was thinking to myself, that is the thing I always call niggerization. And some people get it and some people hate it. They don't understand what I'm saying.
And
it's
the
not
new
just,
cotton.
you know,
That also reminded me of when you talk about
the new cotton. That's right. You always got to create the new cotton. Once cotton goes out, you got to figure out what the next cotton is going to be. Is it going to be whiskey? You know, is it going to be crack? Is it going to be, what is it going to be? Is it going to be lies, media lies? Something has to become the new cotton when the old cotton actually is no longer cotton. But the niggerization process, and the reason I bring that up all the time, number one, it's an ugly word and it's purposefully ugly because the concept that it describes is ugly and true. It's real. So if you want to conquer a people, you go into their country and you find their king and you make their king kiss your feet before the entire village. And then that niggerizes everybody else from that moment forward. And you spend that so that the next generation of babies born on that day don't even remember a time when they had a king. They don't remember a time when they had a culture or a language or whatnot. That is one part of the niggerization. That's the colonizing part of niggerization. Niggerization is a scientific process. If you wanted to learn how you take over a people the way that the machines did in the Matrix, there is a science to it, and you will read it over and over and over again throughout history. The reason I call it niggerization is because in the United States, it became specific to this word nigger, which we talked about in a previous show, and creating a concept behind that word. And the concept is, how do you create a group of people to not know that they are slaves so that they are totally only producers for you? All their entire life's existence is to be a producer for you and your wants and your needs, and that they have none of the human attributes that would require you or anyone else to recognize them as anything other than faceless producers, the muscle of society, right? Now somebody comes along and says, bruh, y'all are asleep. You're being used. Like the Willie Lynch letter is real. Like it may not be a real letter, but it is a real science. You have been niggerized. You are in the Matrix. And I have a red pill for you. You said that Neo is the black child. Okay, so let's say that Neo's the child born into a universe and into a system, not of his own making, who has all the power in him actually to break out of it and to break other people out of it and liberate others. So let's say that's the black child born in the United States, post-niggerization in the United States. Who would be the Morpheus? Who or what would be the Morpheus, you think? And I know it's out of left field question, so just
no, I mean not really. I mean, I would think that consciousness would be, our dopest black educators, whether they're within a traditional kind of thing like a school, like a brick and mortar school, or if it's the uncle down the street, or the person who works at the rec center, or that librarian, right? Like I think that's the educator activists. Like it's those folks who are teaching and preaching and inspiring and whispering a sentence where like Russell Stanton stops me on down at 48th Street and says, "Hey, I remember used to say this," right? And now he's saying it to other people and other youth, right? And he's saying like, yeah, this is part of how I mentor the next generation. So I think it's, the Morpheus is a collective. I don't think it's an individual, but I think it's a collective consciousness of, liberatory efforts. And when we talk about standing on the shoulders, we're standing on our Morpheuses. We're standing on the ones who are telling us like something ain't right. And here's a blueprint. Take a look at this, read this, all of that, I think is our collective consciousness of resistance and love, right? Like love for our people is what fuels our, our work. So
I love that. So Morpheus would be the collective consciousness and likely older brother collective consciousness, meaning it's not Oracle old, but it's not new like you are as Neo. It actually it exists between. It's actually your connection to your heritage and to the past
and your ancestors
and your ancestors. Okay, gotcha,
Absolutely.
gotcha. So this thing that we say all the time, that your ancestors are speaking through you.
Yep.
That's part of it. That's a way to feel about it. You know what? I actually bring this up a lot too. I've been in situations where I've been very afraid of something that I was doing. And if it wasn't for thinking about people in my own family and past, my ancestors, in those moments, I probably would have panicked or freaked out. Especially happens sometimes with me with speaking engagements. Used to happen a lot more, doesn't happen as much. I mean, the moment that you know you're about to go on stage and there's an audience full of people that are going to be staring at you and you're supposed to say something profound, that just for human beings, that's one of human beings' biggest kind of fears.
I always got to go to the bathroom first. Like it does talk to my stomach, man. It always does. Day before school started,
Wow.
26 years. Like the day of, like before that morning, man, my stomach would be like in knots, like you've done this for 20 years, 21st years, like it's still the first day of school. I made promises to these families, like what a responsibility, right? Like, all of that. And the same thing with speaking to people, like it's such a hefty responsibility that, it tears me up inside. I try to like just stay calm and just like, but inside, like, man, feel like there's a battle going on,
Well, you feel like you're going to make a mistake or you're going to say something stupid or somebody sitting in the audience is going to judge you. And my Morpheus energy in that situation is years ago. I actually made this kind of claim for myself. There's claims in my life. I make a claim on something and then it changes the way I think. And then I think that way for the moment after, or for every moment after that. Mm-hmm. And the one I came around this was open your mouth, let your ancestors speak and put yourself away. Hide yourself, just put yourself away and you'll never be nervous. Mm-hmm. And that helped me like years ago with giving public speeches because I would start to say like, this isn't about me. Then the reason I am nervous is because I think this is about me. I think this is, I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm going to be this. And the point of the matter is, if I think back to my oldest ancestor that I can think of, there is shit that they wanted to say that they couldn't, that I can say. So the bottom line is I'm a receiver and a speaker. I open my mouth and that thing that they wanted to say, but would have gotten killed for saying is going to come out my mouth. And I'm not going to give a damn because it's not me talking. It's actually them talking, and they have a right to say what they. Boy, did that change the dynamic of how I speak in public.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's such a beautiful point. One of the things, and I usually say it when I'm, it's like the same pattern. I'll feel that intensity, then I'll remember to breathe. I'll remember the prayers that I want to, say. And it always seems like it's this battle. Something wants me to forget. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to forget. I'm actually going to pray. And I remember one of the prayers I actually do is a prayer that Moses, made where he, traditions say that Moses had a slight speech impediment. And that he prayed for his brother and,
Aaron,
someone to help him. And Aaron would come and help, help him speak. And so, and relay the message. And so I say the prayer, that I would go, look that up and say that, so that's part of it. But I think just that spirituality and connect and the humility, right? Like just, I love how you said, like, it's not about me, right? Where I think a lot of times, I'll hear people speak and it seems like their ego is the one speaking. And it's a lot of like what I did and I did that and I did this, why you should follow me, where it's actually, it's something much more deeper. And if we tap into like the ancestors that you spoke about, people who paved the way, the people that were, had a voice, but it was muted, or it was, it would have been a violent death had they done it. And instead, maybe they didn't speak out. Maybe they just prayed for you to be able to speak out. And so,
there's a point in here, Sharif, in what you just said. Now, people watching, my commentors or commentees or whatnot, this point that Sharif just brought out just hits me like a ton of bricks. This Moses story in the Bible, Moses didn't want to be Moses. Actually, Moses didn't want to step up. Actually, I forgot about this. Moses actually tried to argue with God. Moses was like, God, bruh, like, listen, Aaron is real smooth talking. If you want a talker, you want somebody to put out front. My brother Aaron is the one to put, not me. Don't pick me. I can't talk. I can't speak. I forgot about this speech impediment thing with Moses. In the Matrix, Neo doubts that he's the one. And they have to keep telling him, no, man, you're the one. Be the one. Go out and do the thing. Be the one. And he keeps like saying, no, or whatever. He's looking for any information that tells him he really isn't the one. He's an imposter of some sort. And Moses, like you just said in the story, was trying to get God to go with Aaron because he too did not feel like he's the one. The thing I would say to everybody watching this or listening or whatnot, one deep meaning and point just came to me as Sharif was talking. That's it. What Sharif just said is know that you are the one. right? Like if God put you in a room, in a space, in a negotiation, in a meeting, on a panel, on a blog, wherever God puts you in something or whatnot, there is a part for you to play there. So this imposter syndrome thing will kill the revolution. Like revolutionaries who don't know that they're the revolutionary and that they're in the moment of revolution and where they're supposed to be, no matter how mundane the task, there's probably a reason why you are there doing what you're supposed to be doing. Thanks for that one, Sharif. That one hit me like a lot, because that's a Christian allegory or symbol. I don't know, whatever, in the movie I hadn't caught before, but that is true. He didn't want to be the Moses.
Yeah, like in the Quran, it talks about, Moses prayed to God to grant him fluency of speech and to grant his brother Aaron the gift of prophecy, so that he could help him and so that he could be a part of, be a support, and like a deputy and all the hard work that was ahead. And so for me, it speaks to not only, as you said, like, no, if you were, given this gift to do it, but then also the idea of community, this idea of support, this idea of collaboration, right? Like you don't have to do this alone. And the best, I think, and I'm going to reference, the usual suspects in part of this, the two biggest tricks that the devil puts across is one, that he doesn't exist. And the second one is that you're all alone, right? Like those two things can be crushing to anybody's work. And then Randy Pausch has this quote that you just made me think of, where I said this was part of my signature my entire time as a principal, 16 years as a principal. I had this quote as part of my signature line, that the brick walls are there for a reason. The brick walls are not there to keep us out. The brick walls are there to give us a chance to show how badly we want something. The brick walls are there to stop the people who don't want it badly enough. Right. And then the second quote I would have in my signature line is the one around James Baldwin, that those who say it can't be done are usually interrupted by those who can. Right. And so those two pieces were like just the framing of what I brought into the principalship as a teacher, what I believed in, what I, would talk to my students about, that there's a way, to approach this work. And it takes faith. It takes collaboration. It takes immensely hard work. But the fruits of that, even if you don't enjoy it yourself, your children and your grandchildren, will. And right, like that Japanese, when they talk about, justice is when the old man plants a tree that he knows he won't be around for the shade or the fruit.
Ooh.
Right?
You're just dropping all kinds of them this morning.
Well, I mean, this is, that's why I loved teaching, children, because all of these kind of the philosophy would be embedded as we were reading Things Fall Apart or Animal Farm or, Uncle Tom's Cabin or even Huckleberry Finn, like whatever we were reading, we're trying to, dive into something deeper and help them make the connections between, their lives, their ancestors, their struggle, their internal struggle, their outward struggle, and then the worldwide struggle, and helping them make those connections is just, you're not alone. We're in this together. Even if we can't see each other, we have to know that we are right there in this darkness swinging.
So a couple things you said. One, the trick of the devil to make you believe that the devil doesn't exist is part of putting you asleep, to put you into a matrix. And the devil will feed you. And listen, folks, listen, if you're not Christian and I'm saying the devil and it's ringing in your ears as something that you see as some superstition or whatnot, replace the devil with any entity that has a mastermind place within the universe who will, like, mass marketing might be your devil, right? There's a way in which you start feeling fat and feeling like you stink and feeling like your hair is too gray and this and that and the other. And your behavior becomes, you start buying things to help remedy all of those things or whatnot. Maybe your devil is marketing, right? Maybe, but there is a mastermind outside of yourself. Come on, boo. The world's a little bigger than you. So there's a mastermind outside of yourself selling you something that is a vice that is not good for you. And you are buying it. In some cases, partially because you are in a partial matrix, and there is such thing as a mastermind. of some sort somewhere. It's the reason why people will find themselves on a battlefield holding a gun, fighting people that they've never hated, that they've never met, for a reason that they actually don't clearly understand and of which they have nothing to gain.
What Muhammad Ali say? I ain't going over to kill Vietnamese. Ain't none of them ever called me.
Right? Like, he was clear. He was out the matrix. He was like, that's why they started hating him. They was like, oh, wait, one got out the matrix, right? Ali got out the matrix.
That's when they started hating Dr. King even more, right? They already hated him. But once he started talking about, the war industrial military complex, like, man, they're like, oh, you gotta go.
They loved him. They loved him more after they killed him.
Always.
So let's remember that, everybody. They always love you more after you're dead, right? There are two types of black men that America loves. One who shines shoes and one who dies. So those are the two kind of people that the two black men America loves the most. So Martin Luther King, people always forget about it. While he was still in the Matrix, they hated him. People forget about the fact he wasn't the most popular person while he was alive. Actually, he did
amongst black people.
He did momentous things. He actually did crazy momentous things. He knew he was going to die, right? He knew those things were actually bumping up against the Matrix in a way. You can hear it in his words, right? There's some of his words that'll give you chills. Like when you go back and look at him, it was like, oh, bruh, this is a dude. How do you remember how old he was? He was 30s, right? Early 30s, right?
When he was killed?
Yeah.
I think he was 38. I think him and Malcolm were at the same age, like hadn't even reached 40, which is crazy.
Yeah, right.
36, 38.
They feel old when you look back at them in the past. They feel old, but they really were young.
Yeah, 30, like in their 30s, spitting that fire, doing these things. Like, I mean, that's what I tell. Like, you don't have to wait till you're, gray and old, and like, it's no such thing as youth leadership. It's just leadership, like that's what it is.
Yeah,
like, stop calling them youth leaders or women leaders. Nah, leadership is leadership.
Toya says that he was 39.
39.
And I always think of him as older than that, but it always gives me chills when I look at those last speeches, his last days. He's saying so much prophetic stuff where he knows he's coming to an end. And it's because he has bumped up against the devil. So here's a person who understands the devil actually does exist. And in his world, first of all, he was Christian, so he believed in a literal biblical interpretation of an evil force in the world. And that force had things like militarism and racism and segregation and all kinds of other tools of that evil force to actually put people to sleep and put them into a position where the only use that they had was for their labor, right? That's all anybody ever wants for you. They don't want your mind. They want your body, right? That's what the evil forces of the world want. When we think about schools, and we talk about per pupil income, you've heard me say this before, Sharif. They don't want, like, when I say black students are the new cotton and black per pupil is the thing that they want to harvest you for, the reason that people want to keep you trapped in schools and not let you go to another school is because you have money attached to you. They want your body, even if they will be abusing your mind for years, meaning none of you are going to end up proficient. You're not going to know how to read, even though you're going to a reading factory. You're not going to learn how to count, even though you're going to a counting factory. Like, you are going to prep in a training for reading, writing, arithmetic, all those things, and you're not coming out with any of them. That's got to tell you something. You're in the Matrix, fool. You in the Matrix. That is the Matrix. You know what? Public education is probably the Matrix. I think I just landed. Show over. All right. Well, this has been good, y'all. Bruh, that might be the part of the Matrix where they develop babies so that they could be harvested to be used for the batteries of the Matrix. Okay, that's public education.
Listen.
Wow.
When you look at the history of it, right? Like, it was often for, hey, we want, and we dove into this with Education of Black People in the South by James Anderson, right? Like, he talked about there were people who would even come from the North and say, hey, I'm going to help you open a school. But they were like, and they were trying to convince their white brothers, their brethren in the South, like, hey, stop lynching and killing, stop doing all this, overt, racist tactics. What you really want, what will benefit you the most, is having a slightly educated group of low wage earners. And then you can continue living as well as you want, but you'll be looked at as as benefactor and things like that, right? And so when we talk about, like, everywhere is Mississippi and everyone is trying to, benefit, like, you have to look at the educational system as well. Are they really trying to, one, the side that says, like, they're not going to give you the education to overthrow them, which means to stop their oppression. They ain't going to give you that much education, right? They're going to give you a little bit enough to make you more beneficial to them. And this reminds me of Morpheus. One of Morpheus' one of my favorite quotes here. He's like, when he's talking to Neo or the group, he says, you have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. Chris talked about how they were all plugged into this machine, and most people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inured, so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. That reminds me of Carter G. Woodson, right? Like that back door that they will create, even if it's not there, right? They're going to fight to protect their lower status, their lower existence in the caste system, because they believe like they can't exist without it. Neo, like everyone else, you were born into bondage, into a prison that you cannot taste or see or touch. That's that smog of white supremacy Dr. Tatum talks about all the time, right? That everybody's breathing, and you have to be woke and vigilant in order to resist the ingestion of it. Into a prison that you cannot taste or see or touch, a prison for your mind, right? And so this is all the connections that are made in education and anywhere else when you're trying to, and we talked about this last week. Malcolm said, before you can organize a people, he said the biggest mistake of the movement is people trying to organize asleep people.
Ooh.
He said,
this is why you keep taking on that word woke. This is why you keep taking on the woke.
Exactly. This is why.
Woke go.
Yeah, because I ignore the folks who are just out there, as Kalila Harris talks about, like they in their woke shower caps and they still sleep. Like, I ain't talking about that, because some people are so in love with rhetoric that they're removed from the reality. Right. And so if we're going to be, and I love rhetoric. I think it's important. I think it's important to wake people up and help them connect the dots and all of that. But the battle is in the reality of what we're faced. Right. And so when Malcolm gives that example, this is why he says make it plain, because we got other people who they're not trying to make it plain. They in there talking in their own towers, whether it's ivory or ebony towers. They're talking amongst themselves in this bubble. And they ain't been down on 52nd Street, or whatever 52nd Street represents in any other city in ages, if they were there at all. Right. We're with Malcolm and other folks like that. They were in the middle of Harlem, standing on a crate or a makeshift podium, talking to the people. Who were they talking? They weren't talking to other philosophers as much. They did that, but they were also talking to whoever the so-called throwaways of society, right? The folks who were on drugs, the folks who were drunk, the prostitutes, the folks who had been, lack of education and then pushed to this world just to survive, that had, quite possibly many, elements of criminal behavior or whatever else, right? The disenfranchised is who they were talking to, and they were making it plain. Then you got other folks, they just talking to other philosophers, and they ain't going
for good reason, because that's where their power is. Their power is actually being in the ebony tower. Like, especially in in the Black culture, you have an ebony tower that gets its full, gets all of its membership, its credentials, its validation, its certification, its everything from the tower.
The other PhD. Listen,
people.
People will say, "Oh, Dr. So-and-so said this about you. Dr. So-and-so said about that about you." I'm like, the people I serve, the thousands of families I serve, none of them have even heard of that person. So why would I give a shit what they're saying? What my accountability system is tied to my family, my parents, my community, my students, my colleague. Like, that's my accountability system. Not somebody who wouldn't even, know where our section of the city is, right? Not them. I don't give them that kind of energy. All of my accountability system is tied to the people that I, promise to serve. They're the ones that hold me accountable.
This brings us to a different direction on this one. Then back to the Matrix 2, also, and Josh just put this in the comments here, because I was about to go here anyways. Josh says red pill has been co-opted by the alt-right, which I like to call the alt-white. He puts it as alt-right / white, but no, just go ahead, bro. Let's just like call things what they are. The alt-white red pill. So let's talk about this, because this becomes one of the things that keeps us trapped in the matrix. Is that the matrix, I've called white supremacy like a self-cleaning oven, meaning that even when it gets dirty, its dirt gets cleaned up quickly. It doesn't require any like additional movement. You have talked about on Freedom Fridays about how if the way that white supremacy is working best is if there isn't a back door, that the oppressed will create one for themselves to go in the back door. Right? Like that's when it's working on autopilot. In the beginning of white supremacy, you have to beat people. You have to beat them into submission and lock them up in chain, excuse me, because they still are hanging on to some of their freedom. They're still hanging on to some of their humanity. Their humanity is free. You are born free. It's the world that enslaves your ass step by step. God sends the world free people. The devil puts them in chains almost immediately. Right. So that is the way that this thing works. And if you don't believe the devil exists or whatnot, that is the fastest way to put your chains on. Right. Is to be like, oh, what devil? What devil? He's like, boom, gotcha.
Which one of the sisters said the greatest, something about, when you don't realize you have power, that is the, the worst thing. Like they give up their own power. Right. Like in that.
Yeah. And you do it from step one. But one of the ways, there are Sojourner Truth types and Nat Turner types who actually have a religious vision, a vision of some sort that tells them free the people, and they become the consciousness, the Morpheuses of the people. And that's a role that is played in history. There are also, conversely, the other people, the people who help you go back to sleep. Now, in the Matrix, there's a dude in there who the agents from the Matrix come to him and say, we need you to help us get Morpheus.
Cyphus or something like that?
Yeah, which is actually one of the devil's names, as a matter of fact. I forgot exactly how they spell it in there, but devil has all these names like Beelzebub and Cypher and Cyphus and all these different.
Know that.
Yeah, devil has all these different names. And so in the Matrix, they come to him and they offer him, we're going to put you back in the Matrix, put you back to sleep, and you'll be able to live. We're going to make you a celebrity. And when you go back to sleep, you'll be a celebrity. You'll be famous. You'll be rich. You won't care that you're in the Matrix, whatever. And he's like, that's all I want. Because since I took that damn red pill, I can't eat a steak. I can't live a life. And they're like, if you give us Morpheus, if you help us kill Morpheus, we'll make you famous and you'll have houses and you'll live the life in the Matrix that you've always wanted. So boom, he gives up Morpheus. He becomes the Judas.
It's all the shiny trinkets that was promised to Judas, right?
Yeah, he does the Judas thing, and he's like all for it because he's like, I just want to know what a steak tastes like again. I don't even care if it's not real. I don't even care if it's fake. And he wants to go back in. So I'm always saying that there are people whose job it is to get you back to sleep again, and they get benefit from doing it. That's in the Matrix. But to Josh's point, this red pill, and this is where this came from, the red pill thing. Candace Owens, her entire platform came out of her meme around I'm a red pill black person. She had a platform called the Red Pill. And the red pill.
This is the Trump lady, the black Trump lady, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So Miss Modern Day Sally Hemings actually had a platform called and this is shortly after she was totally an Obama supporter and was actually like totally anti-Trump. And somehow like shortly after that, she created a video called Mom and Dad, I'm a Conservative. And the whole point of the video was to show like coming out as conservative in a black family is like coming out as gay. And it was terrible. And she blah, blah, blah. And she took the red pill is what she said. She said she took the red pill one day and figured out that black people were on a plantation politically and that the right wing was the way to go and that conservatism was it, blah, 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 whatever. So this is a classic false consciousness story of like when you think you wake up, but you really went back to sleep, just another damn level. Right.
Right. Just regular. What they call it, like when you sleep, like your REMs were like, I forget, it's like a stage of deep sleep,
yeah. Well, she wasn't in REM. I mean, she was beyond REM. Okay. That's a good point. So like my point in that is to say that like the red pill there could be counterfeit red pills. So a red pill could be the crack. She took the crack of red pills. Let's just put it that way. And it's important to me because I fell down a rabbit hole in studying where this woman came from and what her politics are about, whatnot, and found a whole league of others just like her with platforms. And then just as recent as last night, as I was preparing for this, I was looking at Jason Riley, Glenn Lowry, John McWhorter, Coleman Hughes. These are all names of Black people right now who have large followings of white people whose sole role it is in politics is to say that Black people are wrong, that BLM is wrong, that thinking that racism exists is wrong, that thinking that the core problem that we have is white supremacy or racism is wrong. And all of their content, all of it. And I dare anybody listening, go look at the people I just mentioned. Candace Owens, Jason Riley, John McWhorter, Coleman Hughes, Glenn Lowry. Go look them up right now and look at the size of their followings. Look at whose rooms they're in when they're talking, and then ask yourself, what's the sum total of their message? The sum total of their message is the number one thing that is holding Black people back is Black fatherlessness, Black lawlessness, Black crime, what they call Black on Black crime, Black inability to participate in a country that is the fairest it's ever been. America is, they say these things, these aren't me saying this. America is the best it's ever been. It's the least racist. John McWhorter has a video called America's the least racist it's ever been. Like, things are the best. There are these agents within the matrix whose sole job it is number one, to put you to sleep, to put you back to work as a body and not a mind, and to make the agents of the matrix happy in saying, see, these guys get it. These guys know that the devil of white supremacy doesn't exist, that it's just you. You're just thinking it. It's all in your mind. You don't need to free yourself from that. You need to free yourself from your own deficits. Bruh, that is like a crazy different red pill.
Bruh, like, it is. And when you think about these, these counter revolutionaries, as they have been called, back in the day, right? Like the counter revolutionaries, their whole purpose. And again, and just notice, as you said, they're following, that's supported and promoted in a particular way. But their whole job is to divert your gaze, your attention, your efforts away from the problems at hand. Right. They want to look at, and again, that what they promote is this self-loathing. They want to say, like, hey, you're the source of all the problems. Right. Like, oh, white supremacy died years ago. It died with the Civil War. Everything since then is your fault. And if you buy into that, and then look at who quickly buys into that, who wants to absolve themselves from constantly, oiling the machine that crushes the aspirations and goals and bodies of Black and brown people. Like they want to be absolved of all of that. And it's always been easy to parade, a couple of these folks, in front of people and get them to talk their nonsense. That's always been the game plan. That's always been.
Do you think they're winning?
You know what? I think they're not winning. I think what they have is, because there's one thing, things of substance, and you can look at, one, how you said their audiences. I think they win in a way that the people who may have, absorbed, these oppressive ideologies, they've not heard of Candace. Like, I've not heard of any of the other folks that you mentioned. I've heard Candace Owens because her name has come up on 8 Black Hands several times, right? And so I was like, oh, that's that lady that we talked about before. But for the youth that we serve, the people that we serve, most of them have not heard of them. Right.
Okay, so let me stop just there for a second.
Their message isn't getting there, but the message itself is already in. It's already in our water. Right.
Well, so, and let me say this: like Glenn Lowry is one of the people that I mentioned. He is like a Cornel West for the other side. He's as famous as Cornel West is. He's got as many books as Cornel West has. His scholarship goes back as far as his first book was called The Content of Our Character. which
but
was
that's my
more
point.
mild than all of these, more mild than what he's become. But they probably, like some of the people you're mentioning, like regular people haven't heard of Cornell either in some ways, to be real.
Mm-hmm.
But Cornell is a public intellectual who's he moves the discussion. Like he moves the water that you live in, whether he's an influencer, whether you know it or not. And I would imagine, I feel the same way about Cornell in this one way is, like average people in the hood are not sitting up always reading. First of all, Cornell doesn't write books like other people do. He doesn't write a lot of them. He doesn't write a lot. He's become totally celebrity, intellectual, but of great import. He does have he is an influencer. He is creating thought product and ideas. And as a matter of fact, for people listening or watching, Cornell West was one of the Wachowski brothers who created The Matrix. One of them, who I forgot what his name used to be, but now she is Lana Wachowski, a trans woman who wrote The Matrix. Actually, Cornell West was her philosophy spirit animal in some ways. There are lots of Cornell's allegory in the movie, and eventually Cornell was in part 3 of the movie. Got a call out of the blue saying, we want you to be in the movie. Yeah, wanted you to be in this movie, is blah blah blah. So where was I going with that? Cornell is out there and does influence culture and influences things. People in the hood may not have heard about him. And to the same side, he is equally matched to people like Glenn Lowry, who's been around. And actually, I messed it up. Glenn Lowry is black. Glenn is a black conservative. It was Shelby Steele did the content of our character. So Shelby Steele, Glenn Lowry, John McWhorter came to fame maybe about 15, maybe 20 years ago. He started writing about we didn't need any affirmative action, that the problem really is that black students come to college disinterested in real learning and unable to use regular English and stuff like that. He's a linguist and he was totally anti-black English and all this stuff. That's how he came to fame. But each of these people, I've read them seriously. I've read them as serious intellectuals because they have some things to say that I find compelling. But in total, you come to learn that the sole purpose that they are being held up as celebrity scholars and intellectuals is because they are black people who in total, with the sum total of what they're saying is, if you are black and you are having a problem, it's because of you. That is the sum total of what they're really saying. They are actually, their job is to take the system off the hook if you look at what they talk about, even now, they all have podcasts and shows. The only things they ever really talk about are how systemic inequality doesn't exist. That behavioral inequality is with the problem, meaning your behavior is the reason why you're jacked up, right?
Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps.
Your bootstraps. They only go after BLM, systemic inequality. They talk a lot about the left, but they don't ever talk about the right. The suspicious lack of analysis that they have is for the system. They have only analysis for people fighting the system. So they're
protectors of it, right?
They're defenders. Like, they play a good role. If the system is a computer program, they are an antivirus. They are the Black Norton. They are the black firewall of the system. They actually make it so that black people won't ever break through with an original idea about how to get out of the system, how to get out of the matrix. I only bring all that up because I think this red pill thing could be played different ways. Like, you can take it and think you see everything as real, but you also could take it and be like, Trump is great, right? I took the red pill and you come out the other end. I think Michelle Johnson in our comment said that pill she took wasn't red. It was only red because she was wearing colored glasses.
It was something else,
it was something else.
Yeah, all right. You've spoken before about like just the lobotomy that some of our people go through. And we always have to look in the Freedom School tradition. We look at who are people's, how do they trace their intellectual genealogy? Yeah. How do they trace their, the lineage of resistance? If they trace it to the system itself, then you already know. And again, it's always the reality that, you know, this divide and conquer piece is going to be part of the, you know, the oppressive system always, right? And it's so easy. And, you know, Malcolm used to talk about this back in the day, like as soon as you start saying like, hey, there's something wrong, they're going to parade somebody that looks just like you to tell you that you're mistaken, that the issue is you, not the system. He said every single time, so as soon as you do it, that's who's going to be paraded to you first. And so, you know, back to your original question, like, are they winning? I would say, like, you know, like they are there, and yes, they are influencer, but they're really, you know, they're the icing on the cake, because the system already is so in depth, you know, as far as like, you know, what's happening. When Malcolm says, who taught you to hate yourself, right? That's that self-loathing. That's that this is all my fault, right? When I walked into my first turnaround school back in 2003, and, you know, as this new principal, early 30s, and I had an auditorium full of middle school students. Like, these aren't old kids. These are middle school, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade students, right? And I'm talking to them, and I said, you know, and this was this school was in the paper, you know, for I don't know how many times. I was the 3rd principal in 6 months, right? Like, all that wasn't the kids' fault, but they had internalized it that it was their fault, right? They internalized like this building looked the way that it did because it was something inherently wrong with Black people who lived in that community. And when I told them, like, hey, we're going to be the best middle school in Philadelphia, they laughed. I mean, the whole auditorium cracking up and asking, Elmeke, are you crazy? Like, you know, this school full of Black children, full of us. How in the world will we become a great school? Right? They had already ingested, you know, the oppressive messages, and it was manifesting itself in a variety of ways. A year or so later, they weren't laughing anymore. Wow. Anybody who lives in Philly can tell you about the story of Shaw Middle School and how this community rallied and turned to school. I didn't turn around. Our staff worked in partnership with the community. It was children, you know, those hundreds and hundreds of children, you know, almost 900 kids said, you know what, we deserve something better. We deserve a better education. They turned that school around, right? But initially, and I wish I had a recording, you know, like I recorded all of that, right? Like, they were cracking up because they couldn't even imagine, you know, them deserving an education, because typically America says you deserve the education your parents can afford, you know?
Wow. Well, I think that is a great place to land. I was really worried about talking about the Matrix today, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it again.
Of course, we have to.
We have to, because now I'm going to go watch part 2 and then finish the trilogy, watch part 3. What I got out of this time, like talking about it now, and you really helped me. Actually, several things you said stuck with me, and I'm going to keep thinking about it. But that that field of where kids are born, young people are born, so that they can be harvested by the machines for their power, but not their thoughts, for their body, but not their cognition, you know, for their to separate the system of separating the soul, the mind, the consciousness from the body and the material, the metaphysical from the material, is the public school. That's the entity. That is the minefield where the machines are putting you into the pods. And once you get into the pods, they are starting to harvest you for your body and prepare you for a life of labor, and prepare you for a life of servitude labor in which it actually benefits and profits them, the machine, the big one, without you ever having an original idea of breaking out of that and being creative, or being an artist, or being somebody who paints your own painting and doesn't need the help of the machines to do it. And that's the public school. And if there is a person to help change that, it's Neo. And you said Neo is the Black child. Neo is the child that carries with them the promise and the potential and everything that is within them, but hidden. It is hidden, and it's probably hidden because the ancestors knew they had to hide it deep down in you for it actually to survive birth, like into a bad nation. To survive it, they had to hide it in you far enough away to where the devil and the Matrix and others couldn't find it. So if the Black child is the Neo situation, the Morpheus is that collective consciousness of freedom and humanity and Blackness that has always existed before you did. It's the echoes of Africa in you. It's the you remembering things that you never experience. Like what is the African consciousness, or the originalist consciousness that exists in you, and you get whiffs of it at times, but you don't know where it came from. Like, wow, that's so, that is the Morpheus of it. That is the black consciousness. And that is the thing that hid deep inside of you. And you carry it as a vessel, even when you don't know, because it's dormant in you on purpose. It has to be dormant, or else the devil would like take it away from you, would comb it out of you like a comb at birth, right? So that's the Morpheus, the collective consciousness that helps you develop into yourself, the liberator, so that you can free the other people, right? And if you look at any freedom story anywhere, you have to ask, where did these people come from? The revolutionary who awakened the people, where did they come from? And they almost always came out of humble beginnings. They almost always came out of something alternative to where the devil couldn't get at them as a baby, couldn't get at them as a young person and get the thing out of them. Or maybe the collective consciousness put them through an experience that stripped down all of their sophistry and made them just real. So like, you know, maybe it's prison for Malcolm X, right? Maybe that's the place in which the dormant gene that was inside of him all along was stripped away within prison. That's a great place for it to happen, because that's a place where the devil thinks they totally got you. Like, you're already, we don't even have to worry about you. You all up in jail. You was a pimp hustling dude, and now we got you in jail, right?
It's like Moses being raised in the castle, right? Like, it's, you know, back to that. Like, you're right under our nose, but this is where your awakening comes, right? Like,
that's where it comes.
You know, and I love how you talked about, you know, just the humble beginnings with, you know, Jesus being born to, you know, a so-called unwed mother, and, you know,
in a manger.
And you know, Muhammad was an orphan, you know, and was raised by a grandfather, and then the grandfather died, then raised by an uncle. So lost, you know, 3, you know, both parents, and then his grandfather, and then raised by, you know, uncle Abu Talib, you know. And something you made me think of so many deep points just in, you know, your last statement, you know, one around like connecting to the ancestors. You know, I love, you know, Kwame Nkrumah, you know, this revolutionary hero. I believe was got his grad degree or a PhD from Lincoln University, I think. But, you know, he used to say, it's not that I was born in Africa. Africa was born in me. Right. And so, like, how are all of these things, as you said, like, you know, what was hidden inside of us so that it could be protected. Right. But we have to work hard in order to realize it, to nurture it, and to help it, you know, help it sprout. You know, that quote I was stumbling with, you know, before, it was Alice Walker, you know, who said, you know, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Right. Like, that's how they give it up. They just assume they don't have it. And so that's how they gave it away. But if you know you have it, if you know you have it, know that the system will recognize that you have it, and you're going to be the first one they're going to come after, you know, so recognize that. And then just, you know, you also mentioned something about just this cognitive, you know, that they don't want Black children's cognitive ability. They just want to, like, hey, how can you make me wealthy? How can we use you to double down on the system, right? And we have to teach our youth that your cognition is your ignition, right? Ooh. Like, in order to ignite, like, you have to be in that space, and that's what's going to help you realize. And then I would end, you know.
Wait a second, slow down, bro. Your cognition is your what?
Ignition.
Whoo!
Yeah.
Damn. I'm done for the day, bro. I'm done.
Well, let's end with Morpheus' quote. You know, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. And may we all, like, know the path and walk the path, because Lord knows there are too many people who know the path, and as Cypher decided to do, like, you know what? Pull up the blankets, turn on the heating pad, and let me go back to sleep. May we not be of that ilk.
Damn, you are killing me, Smalls. You are killing me. Damn. I mean, there is so much in that. Well, let me land on just like one last piece that I always like to bring it back to the most concrete thing that I can think about, which is schools and schooling and our children. We always talk about the 8 million Black children. And this, I'm going to have so much to think about after this, because this idea of separating the body from the mind, when we talk about education and we talk about outcomes, it is always funny to me how when you bring up the fact that, you know, 25% are not proficient, or that the reading isn't where we want to be, in those very specific outcomes that we care about in education, the response from many people in the system is, well, you know, don't trust the tests. Well, those tests don't tell you anything. Well, reading isn't everything. Like there's so much more to worry about.
Reading
life,
isn't
right?
everything. Like the
Reading isn't
blasphemy.
everything. Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. Those really high proficiency rates amongst white children and low amongst black children. Don't worry about that. That doesn't really tell you anything. The fact that they can't do math, no. Don't believe the test. Come on. This is the devil in your ear telling you that the thing you are in school to learn, and the barometers, the thermometers are telling you that learning isn't happening, and they're telling you, don't worry about that. No, that's not for you. You know why? Because that's
teach them yoga.
Well, give them hugs and all this other stuff, but that is because they are tenders of the body, not of the mind. They don't want you worried about the mental part of things, the cognitive part of what they're doing for you. They want you to worry about the body part. Don't we love you? Don't we give you hugs? Don't we try to feed you and fight for you to have material things in life outside of being cognitive like we are? I mean, and you have to say, well, wait a second, you have a college degree to do this job. You have a full ass life. You have 3 months off a year. You have a pension to tend to my body, but not be concerned about my mind. Wow, that seems like a weird deal. Why it's important for you to have a college education and to do well on these tests, but it somehow isn't important for us. Weird. I want people to recognize this thing about the separation between the cognitive and the body, the mind and the material. And they will keep talking to you often about the body of the Black child. Discipline, that's talking about the body, or, oh, this is what we do in this. Please look at all this body stuff. You know, we just are not doing well by our Black boys in this one way that has to do with the body, but not the mind. But then when you say, okay, I agree with you. You are not doing well with that. You are doing terrible with that. Let's talk about the mind part, though, because what we want, what do we say about the revolution? The revolution will be literate.
Yeah.
There's never been a revolution that has not thought about the cognitive of the people. You mentioned in this show, the awakening of the people, the cognitive part, the cognition part is what you're trying to make happen. So if you have an entire system, a $700 billion system that is telling you, don't worry about the cognitive part, that's the devil. That's the matrix. You're in the matrix, my friend. You are in the beginning of the matrix, and the devil is telling you not to worry about the things that you should be worried about, right? Because those are the very things that will break your ass out of the matrix and have you grow up, go to college, become literate, become a teacher, start a school, and free others and others and others behind you, right? So they are throwing you off the scent of your own liberation as early as kindergarten.
Yes.
My final word. You got a final word, bro?
No, that was my final word. I co-sign on everything you just said. I
appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
As always, this has been another Freedom Friday. We are still not free, but hopefully you are freer now at this point of the show than you were at the beginning of it. This was a fun show for me to do, and it's mostly because Sharif always sets me off on a boat for the rest of the day and the weekend to write a bunch of stuff. And I don't get done with any of it ever. So thank you for just giving me more writing prompts than I ever needed. But cool. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you again for another great week.
No, thank you. Thanks for having us. And thanks for our audience who, again, I'm looking forward to reading all the comments and learning more. And I know someone had said they were going to binge on The Matrix, and that's not a bad thing to do this weekend over there or the next week, just to dive in and really look at all the connections that can be made to real life. Sometimes what they say, art, copies life, or life copies art, or whatever. But this is one of those examples of it. Thanks again, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody watching. And as always, if you need to get in touch with Sharif is on Twitter at Selmekki, SEL Mekki, MEKKI. I should have put that across the bottom, but I figured out by now most of y'all know how to reach us. And I'm on Twitter at Citizen Stewart. So if you want to continue the conversation, let's do it. Take it to Twitter and hit me up. There's one thing I will always talk about: The Matrix, and have been
same here.
Years. So absolutely. If y'all have any other thoughts, put it on Twitter. We'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Peace.